welcome everyone to today's Be More Uncommon talk. There we go, I did it. So for anybody who hasn't been to an Uncommon talk before, or if you're new to Uncommon in general, we provide a safe space, on a safe online space for neurodivergent tweens and teens to make some friends, collaborate, explore creativity, and just grow in confidence. So our mission is to help kids with autism, ADHD, PDA, and more to find somewhere where they feel like accepted, find some friends, and just thrive and be themselves. So we run clubs, courses, and of course, talks like this that you are here now. So just in case you haven't been to one of these before, I am Mivy. Hello. I have ADHD. I facilitate a lot of sessions like Roblox and Minecraft, sometimes video stuff, Gamers Club, and then I also host these talks. And as you can tell, my O's are going all over the place today. I'm so sorry. Um, so these talks are designed to inspire and empower our neurodivergent community by showcasing lovely individuals such as Ali here with their experiences and challenges and triumphs. So, Ali, please, would you like to introduce yourself?
That is very daunting talking about triumphs so early in the session. But my name is Ali. I am 28 years old. I had to think about that before I came on the call just to remember. And I am a copywriter by day and an author by night. So I do a lot of writing all the time for very different reasons. I'm autistic. I was diagnosed when I was 23. I'm also in the process of getting an ADHD diagnosis, but we're not quite there yet. And what more can I say about me? I'm very excited to be here with everybody this evening.
I'm so excited to have you. I feel like so many people that we've had on have always said, I'm looking for an ADHD diagnosis
Yeah.
or an autism diagnosis. I feel like they definitely go hand in hand in some
Hmm.
way. I'm just pure ADHD and it shows a lot of the time. But yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. I feel like this is going to be a very exciting session. I also completely forgot to mention for anybody who is watching, we cannot see or hear you, but we can see anything you write in the chat. And if you have any questions for Ali, please feel free to do so in either the chat or the question and answer Q&A section, and we will get to them at some point, either during the talk at the end. And yes, there we go. So yes, let's get into it. So, as you said, you weren't diagnosed until your 20s. I was also late diagnosed. I think I was like, ooh, I don't know, also 25, 26.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely was a bit of a shock, but not really, because in my brain I kind of knew. Um, but yeah, looking back, I can definitely see so many instances where it makes a lot of sense. So,
Hmm.
how did that shape your experience growing up, especially at school?
I think for me, my childhood and like my time at school was quite challenging. And I think that's quite common for people who are late diagnosed because you experience all of the difficulties with, like, for example, a school environment that come with being autistic or ADHD or any other form of neurodivergent, but you don't necessarily understand that that's what's going on at the time. And so I think looking back now, there are a lot of things that were signs and that should have given it away, but unfortunately didn't. And so yeah, I would say it was quite challenging, but there were also a lot of positives as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think in some ways, like I always say, my pattern recognition is one of my favorite things. That always comes very handy, even in just like trivial kind of ways, like when we're watching a film with some friends. I think part of one time I like guessed a movie plot super correctly, and people were like, "Wow!" And that was like a good that, at least to me, that was a good
Yeah,
icebreaker at university, you know? So it definitely comes in handy sometimes, but it also really adds to navigating an already quite challenging environment. So I feel like
100%.
that's very, very relatable to a lot of people. What were some things that kind of brought you joy during your time kind of navigating a school environment?
So I have always really loved to read and really loved to write. I've been doing it since I was a little kid. And hilariously, the only times that I ever got told off at school were for reading when I shouldn't have been reading. So I was very much a goody two shoes, which I think is a profile that fits quite a lot of autistic girls. And I would get so bored in my lessons that I would hide whatever fantasy book I was reading at the time behind my textbooks and read it. And then the teachers would obviously catch me and they'd be like, "Ali, you're supposed to be learning about the orbit of the sun. Why are you reading Twilight?" And I'm like, "Because one must read Twilight." But yeah, I think that having that escape through books and also being able to explore my own feelings through the writing that I was doing as well was really, really positive for me. And I think that a lot of my favorite memories from that time are from sharing books with my friends or finding a quiet corner and curling up with a hot chocolate and reading, like all that kind of stuff really brought me a lot of joy and still does now. Still my favorite thing to
Yeah, I'm a massive Twilight fan, so
do.
I'm glad that
You
we
can
see each
relate.
other. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I don't read as much now because I have visual stress, so it like makes everything a bit difficult. But I definitely remember in school that was also one of the things that I held on to quite a lot, and I'd literally devour books in the library. Like I think
Yes.
one time I won a competition because I happened to be the one like taking out a lot of books, and it's just like, oh my goodness,
Yeah,
little
one of
me.
my funny stories from that time is that I wanted to raise some money for children in need. I think that's always a big thing in British school is everybody wants to do some kind of fundraiser for children in need. And mine was how many books I could read in a week. Do you want to know how many books I read in a week? 63. I know. Wild. What was I had no life. I had no life outside of books. But it just goes to show if you love something, there is space for it everywhere.
That's beautiful. And also
Oh,
63 books is crazy.
I
How
know. I mean, to be fair, I was in primary school, so they're like, I mean, they're not books that am thinking of that I read right now. Like, I'm not thinking like the Lord of the Rings trilogy or anything like that. But for the age that I was and the length of books that I was reading at that time, I think it's still pretty cool. I'm proud. I'm proud of baby Ali and what she achieved.
me too. No, that is wild. I feel like do you have like a good reads thing now? I know a lot of people that read love to
I
like log.
don't. I should. I should, but I don't. I need to get into that.
It's like oh there's that film version. I can't remember what it is right now. But it's like a nice way to like remind yourself what you've read and also like a nice like tick, you know. Um
Yeah.
so one thing that I think is would be really cool for some people to hear is about your first poem that you had published when you were 9. Yeah,
Yes.
could you tell us a bit about that?
So when I said that I've been like reading or writing my whole life, I genuinely meant it. So I started writing little poems with my grandma. My grandma always massively encouraged my like interest in literature and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to joke, probably from like age 5 or 6, we were writing cute little poems together and singing them and whatever. And it was very cute. One of the poems that I wrote got published in my local newspaper when I was 9. And it was called I Really Hate the Telephone. And I think that should have given away to everybody how autistic I was, but it didn't. I wrote a whole poem about how much I hate telephones, and it didn't give it away. Isn't that amazing?
Was it just like I hate answering it because I definitely hated answering the telephone? Or
Would you
was it
like me to recite the poem? I know the whole thing off by
please do,
heart.
please do.
Okay,
Everybody, this is an
get
exclusive
ready.
moment.
I have never done this publicly before. This is an uncommon special. I really hate the telephone. It makes me scream and shout. It makes me lose my temper. It makes me stamp about. I hate its constant ringing that drives me up the wall. The way it bleeps annoyingly when I've missed a call. I hate the people who ring up and say I've won some money. I know that they're telling lies and that they think it's funny. I really hate the telephone, so I've thrown it in the bin. Good riddance to modern technology. I knew it was a sin.
I hope everybody's clapping at home. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I would love to know if we have any authors in the chat or
Thank
anybody
you.
who's a writer, because that's really cool. What was the process of getting it published? Was that something that you were like, hey, I'm gonna do this, or like did your parents do it? How did that happen?
Do you know what? I think it was very much that my parents often got this newspaper and it would be lying around the house. And the only bit that I would ever read, because obviously I'm 9 and I don't really care about newspapers, is the section where they publish poems. It was genuinely a thing that they had. They had a page where they would publish poems. I don't know if it was weekly or monthly or anything like that. And I think it was one of those moments where your parents think everything you do is absolutely fabulous, and rightly so, they should. And I think they thought, Ali's poem could be in the newspaper. And so that's how it ended up in there. Everybody told me it was great, and everyone's been very generous in the chat telling me that it's great this evening. So clearly it hit the right spot, and that's how it made it onto the pages.
Yeah, I mean, the rhyming scheme for not to
Oh, it's
belittle a
so
9-year-old.
satisfying. It's so satisfying.
I love it. I've never been very good at poems. I like the idea of writing a poem, but whenever it comes to it, I'm just like the easiest rhyming word that is there, it never hits. But that I felt that in my soul. Um
Thank you.
so we're still talking kind of about childhood, I guess, but how did getting your diagnosis as an adult change how you kind of view like younger self and like yourself now?
I think that it really opened my eyes to how hard I was on myself as a child. I think that as a young person who felt that I didn't fit in with other people around them and didn't understand why that was, despite trying very hard, growing up and getting that diagnosis meant that I finally understood the reasons why I wasn't necessarily the same as everybody else I was in class with at school or what have you. And it just allowed me to be a lot more compassionate, a lot kinder to myself. And I think that my relationship with myself is so much stronger now as an adult because I really like myself now. And I don't think I ever could have imagined saying that as a kid, just because I didn't understand. And looking back, I just send like a lot of love to childhood Allie because I feel she gave herself a very rough time and she didn't need to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm gonna say relate a lot during this talk, but yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Even now, some days I have a bit more of a difficult day against my brain, and
Mm.
it's very difficult to be like, it's okay, like today was just a bad day. Recently I was told to think of rather than a bad day, like a bad hour, which I
Mm.
hope will be beneficial because, instead of writing the whole day off. But yeah, I think it's really important to remind yourself like you might struggle with some things but it's okay and like you're brilliant at other things. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that because you're just with yourself. um
Yeah.
my next question kind of fits perfectly into that. What kind of either steps did you take or like strategies or something like that? Like what helped you shift from kind of like, self-doubt into feeling proud of your neurodivergence?
So for me, a big part of that was definitely getting really involved with the neurodivergent community. So for me, as an adult, that kind of came through social media because I was on Instagram. I was posting on Instagram about my experiences as being late diagnosed autistic, as a lot of us like to do. And there were a lot of other people on there who were sharing their own stories. And I think because I'd grown up not necessarily knowing a lot of other neurodivergent people, it meant that I really resonated and I really connected with these people. And it made me realize that being neurodivergent isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of. And look what all of these other beautiful people are doing with their lives. And I certainly think that if I'd got my diagnosis at school, I would have tried to seek out more people like me and more people who saw the world a little bit differently, because I think there's so much power in us all championing each other and supporting each other. And I think that when you have those conversations with somebody else who's also neurodivergent, like it just clicks and sparks fly, and it's like the easiest conversation you've ever had in your life. And somebody from the outside who doesn't think like we do might be looking at it thinking, what on earth is going on? That looks awful. That's so chaotic. Or what are they even talking about? Or anything like that. And you just don't get that when you're on the same wavelength as someone. So I think that's the very long answer. And the short answer is community. Surround yourself with people like you, and very soon you'll realize that being neurodivergent, whilst it has its challenges, is also super, super special and something to enjoy if you can.
Yeah, I love long answers, so feel free to ramble on as much as you want.
Yeah,
But
I'm a good waffler.
haha on your desk. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Um yeah, I think that's probably the thing for me as well. Like brains are a very funny thing, and I think it really does help to find the humor in like, oh no, I did this again, haha. When you're like talking to people who are very much like you, and finding the silly in like both of your brains. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we strive to do here at Uncommon. So yeah, I'm glad that that helps people. So talking about school, and you said that you like to read and like to write, and that was kind of your I guess escape. Um Thinking back pre-diagnosis, how did you make sense of your time at school, and like how I guess you've already kind of touched on this, but like, how do you understand that differently then versus now?
So I think, yeah, that really kind of draws together a couple of the things we've talked about already, in the sense of, for me, reading and writing was an escapism. And the reason why it helped me to make sense of my own experiences is because I really loved, fantasy and all that genre, and um, people, characters feeling different and then behaving differently to the rest of the characters in the book. Like that was a really common theme in a lot of fantasy books at the time. You think about, like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head and it's really embarrassing because my brain's gone blank, but things like Twilight and the Hunger Games and all of that kind of stuff. Like the characters in those books that you follow and that you get attached to are the people who think differently and who do things differently. And so for me, getting really invested in those universes was escapism, but it was also reassuring myself that how I was okay, because, like, how many people love those book series? They're not going to love them in spite of the characters. They're going to love them because of the characters and because of what they do. And so I think, in terms of making sense of how I coped with that, I look back now and I think I know that I was looking for that sense of community that I've just talked about, but because I couldn't find it in my real life, I found it in the books and what I was writing about and the stories that I was making up on my own. And looking back on them now, I can really get a window into how younger Allie was thinking and feeling, because it's all there, the kind of books I was reading, the stories that I was writing. And it's really nice as an adult to be able to still do those things whilst also having the real life equivalent of having found my community.
Yeah, I also was a Hunger Games person.
There we
Um
go.
but yeah, I think that's such a good way of looking at it, like a window into like past you. I think, you can do the same with like songs they used to listen to at that
Mm.
time. And yeah, TV shows, that's something that I used to, and I still do, really escape with. And I think uh you can also really use them, like fandoms are such a good way of finding community, and I think that also tends to help you find people of the same kind of wavelength as well. I'm gonna ask one of the questions that I see, and I may touch upon this later in another one, but I think this would be really interesting. Do you think you read things differently than most because of your career slash neurodivergency?
Ooh, I'm not sure I understand that question. Could you say it in a different way?
Yeah, I will attempt to.
Thank
Um,
you.
so do you find like I guess because of like you're a copywriter as well as an author, and then also, with your autism as well. Do you find that when you're
Mm,
reading things, you're like looking into things a bit more, understanding things differently, kind of reading the subtext?
got you.
Yeah, something like that, or like even just like your own life experiences as well. I kind of that feeds into it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a very literal sense, when I'm whether it's, reading about something new, or I'm watching a TV show that I'm really interested in, or I hear about, I don't know, an era of history that I didn't know very much about before, I get properly into that very, very quickly. And I think that's very common for neurodivergent people. You fall down that hyper focused rabbit hole. And so for me, I can never just read a book, I can never just watch a TV show. If I love it, then I have to know the backstories of all of the characters. I have to know if there are any spin off universes that they exist in. I have to know what was the historical setting of it, all that kind of stuff. Like, I have to build this huge world, I guess, around it so that it can exist for me in Technicolor and I can really appreciate all of the different nuances of it and things like that. And I think as well that having such a like deep relationship, I love that somebody in the chat has just gone, the law. Yes, the law. I have to know the entire law around the thing that I'm engaging with. But I think that in real life, I bring that to how I read people and situations as well, because for me, being able to relate to whatever might be happening around me, I have to think about something I already know. And we've talked about this that's not a word. Previously, when we've said that, in a conversation, if a neurodivergent person is trying to relate to you, you give an example from your own life, because you're like, I see what you're bringing to the conversation and I understand because I've experienced XYZ. And I think I do the same thing when I'm reading people or I'm reading situations, because I'll think, where in Twilight did something like this happen? And then I'll think about it and then I'll be like, and they reacted like this. So I'm going to do that because I've learned from that. So I hope that answers the question. I feel like I might have taken it on a tangent, but yeah.
No, I like that answer. And yeah, I also like that you brought in what we were talking about before because yeah, it's something that I find myself doing constantly. And I'm sure so many people, if not all people in who are watching now, can also relate to that. So yes, thank you for that. I guess one thing that crops up a lot that I'd like to touch on is do you have any kind of like strategies? I am not being able to speak today. I'm so sorry, everyone.
Both of
Um,
us now.
okay. Do you have any strategies that you use to kind of either help you kind of navigate, also advocate? Advocate is such a big word, I think, during times in school or university that you found more challenging.
I think I've definitely learned a lot more strategies after I was diagnosed. So for me personally, that's going to look like going into the workplace, but I think that they're equally as applicable in a school or a university setting. I think one of the things that I realized very quickly was that I needed to be able to communicate with people, not just my needs, but also the support that would help me. I think that there's around neurodiversity, there's this really great movement towards understanding as a society. I think it's getting a lot better than it perhaps has ever been before. However, there is no guarantee that the teacher you're talking to, or the new friend that you make at school, or somebody in the after school club you're at is going to have any background in what you experience. So finding ways to explain your experiences um, is absolutely essential. And and there's no right way. I think that was the important thing, is that for me, the strategies to embracing being neurodivergent, not being ashamed of being neurodivergent, but also getting the support I needed, came from being able to say, okay, when I'm in a room where there's lots of different people talking and there's fluorescent lighting overhead and somebody had a tuna sandwich for their lunch, I feel as if the whole world is climbing on my chest and is sat there and is heavy and is holding me down, and I can't move past that whilst all those different things are happening. And in medical terms, that's me having a panic attack. But you don't necessarily have to describe it that way. You can explain to people how it personally makes you feel, and that helps them to get some insight into what your lived experience is like. So I think my kind of key takeaway in terms of coping strategies and advocating for yourself is to communicate in a way that feels right to you. So for me, I've got a very vivid imagination. I'm an author, that's kind of my job. So I can say things like the world is climbing on my chest. But for other people, it might look like drawing how you're feeling, or it might look like using communication cards and pointing out how it makes you feel, or it might look like having to take some time out and say, I just need to be like away from this scenario to process everything that's happening in order for me to be able to communicate with you afterwards. Um, so I think that's really what I would go with as my number one, and something that I really felt I learned a lot about after I got my diagnosis, is that any way that you can share your lived experience with somebody is valid and is a positive thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think again that's something that I'm learning to do because, like if you're with a friend and you kind of hide when you're feeling uncomfortable, you'd want your friend to be comfortable and you'd want them to tell you how they're feeling. So why can't you do the same for yourself because you know that they'd want you to be comfortable?
Exactly.
Yeah, I recently went on a trip with a friend and I had to really uh quickly learn to be like, I'm sorry, I've had like it's been a big day. I need like some me time, or I don't love going here at night because I don't like that, or it's too loud. And they were perfectly happy to kind of like help
Yeah.
me. And yeah, I think it's just normalizing it. And I think slowly things are becoming more normalized as well. Like I see so many people now talking about like wearing headphones places, or like the loop earbud thingies.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
those have become such a big thing, and they're so small that it's just like you just whip them out and put them on. I see one question from somebody that's asking for tips not to feel overwhelmed, particularly for them in big corridors, but I think we can kind of generalize this a bit. Yeah, like Ali was saying, I think being able to say when you're not feeling comfortable and verbalizing that is such a big thing. It depends on, I guess, like what makes you feel overwhelmed. Like, could you, again, if it's the noise, could you like wear earphones? If it is like feeling like if you're in the middle of it and there's lots of people either
Yeah.
side, you could walk to the side, stuff like that. When I go to concerts now, I make sure that I'm on like the edge or behind because otherwise in the middle it's too much. So yeah, it's just finding many things like that. Sorry, I just waffled a bit. Ali, feel free to jump in if you want to.
I was going to say exactly the same. The first thing I was going to say was about kind of find your route through the corridor, like using this as an example, but you can take it into other places. Find your route through the corridor, and as much as you can, stick to it. Don't let yourself get stressed if you have to go around somebody or anything like that. But if you know, I maybe you're feeling a little bit claustrophobic, so you should probably walk where the windows are rather than next to all the lockers or all the classrooms, because then it's going to feel a bit more open for you. As maybe said, you want to stay away from the crowds, then you can go on the outside rather than in the middle. I again, I'm thinking about in the workplace because that's when I realized I was autistic, but it's still relevant. I take headphones and sunglasses to work every single day. And sometimes my colleagues know that if the sun is too bright or the fluorescent lights are really getting to me that day, I will be sat working in sunglasses inside. And everybody knows that. They're just, "Oh, that's just Ali. That's just Ali in her sunglasses, even though it's the middle of December," because sometimes that's what you need to do. And I think if you can feel confident to do that, and you can say, you know what, I know that this is the best thing for me, and I'm going to put my sunglasses on and walk down the corridor, like go for it, because it's going to make life easier for you. So yeah, I think those are all good tips.
Yeah, no, I think the sunglasses thing is such a big thing. I now can't live without my sunglasses, even on like a slightly overcast day. Things are bright. Outside
Mm-hmm.
is bright, and
Mm-hmm.
if you can make stuff easier for yourself, then try it's best that you do so, and hopefully it's normalizing it for everybody else as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I'd love to go into like your passions, especially writing, and of course also the Autistic Guide to Adventure. So to start with, because I feel like we have a lot of potential authors in chat. Um, so you've loved reading and also writing from such a young age. When did it shift from being like a hobby and an escape into more of like a job, I guess?
I think honestly, it only really came when I started writing the Autistic Guide to Adventure, when I was actually working on my first book. Because growing up, my family were always incredibly supportive of my writing. And as we got the poem in the newspaper, they thought it was great, but they didn't necessarily see it as a career path for me. And they always encouraged me to kind of pursue other things as my full-time career. So after school and university, I didn't even go straight into writing. Like, admittedly, when I left university, one of the first things I started working on in my free time was my book, my first book. But I wasn't getting paid to do that. I was doing that because I loved it. And then it's happened that it's been published, and now that it's published and people can buy it, I get paid afterwards. Um, and I've only within the last 6 months started writing full time as my career. So I've moved to a luxury travel company where I'm the copywriter. So that means that I look after all of the words on the website, basically anything that's written on our website. I haven't necessarily wrote it because the business has been around a lot longer than I have, but that's my job to update it, and I'm the one who's writing all of the new stuff that's going up. And so I think it was a very slow realization that, oh my gosh, I can actually like pay my bills and have a roof over my head and get my dog nice toys because I have money from writing. And I think that's okay. I think don't put a huge amount of pressure on yourself for writing to be your career from day one. If that feels too much, it's okay to do something else and just write for yourself on the side forever if that's how you want to do it. But if you would like it to be your career, it's okay to build up to that slowly. I am 28. I became a writer full time at 28, but I did a lot of other things before then. So there's no time scale. You can write whenever you like. And the more that you do write, the better you'll be, and the more chance you'll have of making it into a career.
For those curious, I guess, what like and this is not to like give anybody like, oh, this is how you get into writing, but like what A levels did you do? I guess GCSEs, A levels, and then what did you study at uni?
Oh, so this is going to confuse so many people. For my GCSEs, I did obviously everyone does their English, maths, and science, but in terms of the choices I made, I did German language. I did history because, as we know, I'm a big history geek and I like to learn about all those things. And I also did health and social care. So, like learning about looking after people and looking after communities. I was one of those people that got sent home with a fake baby. It was very bad. It did not go well for me, but that's a whole other story. And then for my A levels, what did I do? I did history again. I did German again. And I also did English, of course, English literature, and classical civilizations. So, like ancient history, which was super, super, super duper interesting. Really loved that. And then at university, I studied religion. I did religious studies. I know, honestly, I'm so sorry, guys. This is why I think it's so lovely to have this opportunity to talk to people and to share about my lived experience, because when you hear all of the things that I've done at school and university, you think, how on earth did she become a writer? Who on earth gave her a job to be a writer? She's clearly not qualified to do this. But the beauty of it is that the whole time that I was studying all of those different things, I was writing for myself, and I was building up my skills and I was building up my experience. And sometimes I was getting things published. I'd send things into magazines or to websites and I'd get them published the same way I had that first poem published when I was 9. And so when I was ready to write my book, for example, having not had any kind of qualifications in being a writer, I could send in examples of what I'd written and I could show people, look, you might not have ever picked it up in Waterstones before, but here's all the stuff that I've been working on. And then to get my job that I'm in now, I spoke a lot about my book at my interview because that was something that I'd worked on myself independently. I'd spent my evenings and weekends on it around other full-time jobs. So I'd shown that I was dedicated, and I could bring my book in and I could say, look, I know that I don't have any qualifications as a writer. I know that I don't have any paid experience of being a writer. But the reason why you should pay me to be a writer is because I can write, and I could show them that. And so, what I would love if we have some writers in the room this evening to take away from my experience is that nothing you can do, no choices that you make can ever stop you from becoming a writer. So don't stress about your GCSEs, don't stress about your A levels, don't stress about uni if you choose to go to uni, don't stress about what job you go into if you don't fancy going to uni. Just keep writing for yourself. And over time, you'll build up a beautiful collection of things that you've written. And if you want to take that further, you'll have something to take it further with.
That was a very good answer, and I feel like it goes for a lot of careers, I think, showing that you are passionate about something and also showing that you have like a portfolio of stuff, even if it isn't like professional experience or like
Yeah.
paid experience, goes like such a long way because again, it shows that you're passionate about it and care about it and know stuff. Um, I had another question, but I've forgotten it. However, we do have one interesting question that I'd like to get your thoughts on. So, do you feel like knowing a second language does influence your English writing style? I feel like German is so very different in how it phrases and describes things to English.
Absolutely, I do. So, interestingly, my partner is half German. So, we've been together for 8 years. He grew up in Germany and then he moved to the UK when he was a teenager. And I notice massively when he speaks to me that he uses, as this person has said in the chat, like German ways of phrasing things. So, he'll be speaking to me in English, but he'll say something in a very German way. And I'll be like, that sounds so strange. Why would you say it like that? And then I twig and I remember, okay, it's because when you were learning to speak, you were learning to speak something differently to me. And I think I don't necessarily speak a lot of German because I'm not very confident with my spoken language, but I still read a lot of German. I still watch YouTube videos in German and watch films in German and things like that. So I'm still quite exposed to the language. And I love it because for anybody who's not familiar with German, they're very, very direct with how they describe things. So, for example, if you want to say gloves in German, you say Handschuhe, which literally means hand shoes, shoes that you put on your hands. And there are so many different words in German that are just like that, and I think for me, it feels like the most autistic language because they're just getting straight to the point. They're like, we're not going to invent a new word for gloves when we already have hands and shoes and they go together so well. And I think that that really helps with my own writing because naturally, when I'm thinking, I get straight to the point. I'm not somebody who beats around the bush. I'm not somebody who kind of spends 5 minutes getting to the point when I could do it in 30 seconds. And it means that thinking about the way that things are described in German, for example, I might write like that when I'm writing in English just because it accurately communicates what's in my head onto the paper. Um, that was arguably hands down one of the best questions I've ever been asked on something like this. So to you who asked it, thank you very much.
I love that. I feel like I'm part Chilean. I can't speak a lot of it, but I can understand it fluently. And so often I find myself like making jokes in between the language to myself, like puns or something, but nobody other than my mum would probably understand because it's like taking an English word and like a Chilean whatever. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
very interesting how language interacts with it. Um one question that I have is, like you said that you'd been writing for a while. So when it came to like showing your book, you had it basically, or had some version of it. What gave you the confidence or like the ideas even to write the Autistic Guide to Adventure? What inspired it?
So, yeah, amazing question. I grew up in a really outdoorsy family. So my parents were in the Scouts and the Guides, respectively. They were leaders. When my brother and I were kids, they used to drag us off to camps with all of their Scout and Guide troops, and we'd be putting a tent up next to them and whatever. And a great story from that time is that my parents used to literally dump me on a blanket outside of the tent. Dump is a very strong word. They used to gently place me on a blanket outside of the tent. And then they could leave me there whilst they got on with like jobs in the tent. So they could see me, but they weren't necessarily right next to me because they knew that I hated the feeling of grass so much that I would never crawl off the blanket. So again, how did you not know? How did you not know? But all of that is to say that I grew up in this really outdoorsy family, and I really struggled to enjoy the kind of activities that my parents and my brother used to really enjoy. And it always made me really sad because I thought, come on, surely I should have got the same genes. Like we're all in this together, and yet you're having a great time and I'm crying over here having a meltdown. And after I got my diagnosis, all of the pieces fell into place, and I thought, gosh, right, okay, so got some serious sensory issues going on here. Those need to be addressed. Sometimes I struggle with the communication aspect of activities. I don't really understand what someone's trying to tell me to do or how I'm supposed to feel whilst I'm doing it or anything else. And then, of course, you've got the social aspect when if you're doing a team sport, if you're going to an activity center and you're doing something surrounded by strangers, that can be really scary as well. So all of these things were becoming very apparent to me. And I thought, I'm going to do some research into this because I forgot when we were doing my educational history earlier. After my degree in religious studies, I did another degree, a master's degree in research methodology, the most autistic thing I think you can possibly study. So it was whilst I was doing that degree that I got my diagnosis. And also, it meant that I had the research skills to look into very academic sources about what was going on, the relationship between being autistic and struggling outdoors and being active and that kind of stuff. And as I was doing that research, I realized this isn't easily available for people. I can access this because I have a master's degree. Not everybody has that. Not everybody even has the time to go looking for all of this information. And there is no one place that you could go to learn I'm autistic. How can I be more active? How can I get outdoors? How can I enjoy these activities? So I decided to make that place, and that place is my book, which is the Autistic Guide to Adventure. And I think that the inspiration really came about because it didn't exist. And so for me, I felt, right, well, I'm not going to hoard all of this to myself. I'm going to share it with as many people as I can. And it's been very successful within the autistic community, and I've had a lot of really lovely comments from people who've read it and who've said they found it really helpful. So that's been a lovely experience all around.
That's so lovely to hear. And yeah, I can definitely relate to some of those. I've never been great with grass, not to mention my hay fever. So it explores 35 outdoor activities, I think. Yes. So how did you go about kind of deciding which ones to include, and like how did you like research and test them and all of that lovely stuff?
So, yes, 35 different activities in the book. And I will tell you now, I have not done all of them. And I will never do all of them because some of them in there are things that I hate. But I had to include them. And I think it was important to include them because not everybody who is neurodivergent is going to have the same relationship with the world around them. So, for example, the example that I'm thinking of is wild swimming. I hate swimming. Swimming is not for me. Um, for so many reasons. It's just not a vibe. However, I know that there are loads of autistic people out there who love swimming and who are water babies and who love spending time in the water. So I'm not going to not include that because I personally don't like it. And so, in terms of deciding which activities to put in the book, I had to make sure that there was a really good selection. So it wasn't just stuff that I liked, it was stuff that could cover what everybody was interested in. But also, I wanted two things. I wanted them to be things that you could do on your own. So you can do them with other people, but it's always optional. You can always do the activities by yourself if you want to. And the second thing was that they got you outdoors. So some of them aren't necessarily obviously outdoor things like drawing. You could do drawing inside or outside. But when I was kind of describing the activity and ways that you might engage with it, I tried to make it more of an outdoor focus because really that was the point of the book. It was to try and get people to go outdoors more, to spend more time outdoors, to understand why it was so good for them to go outdoors, and also to understand how to do it in a neurodivergent friendly way.
What is your favorite activity from the book?
Goodness. I think I would have to say either roller skating, because I love roller skating, or stargazing, for very different reasons. I think roller skating for me, there's a sense of feedback that I get through my body when I'm roller skating that I really enjoy. So it's like a sensory seeking activity, which is not normally what I'm into. I'm normally a sensory avoider at all costs. So roller skating is one of those very rare activities for me where I'm going to experience something that's going to make me feel kind of more awake and alive and that kind of thing. And then for stargazing, it's so peaceful. It's so peaceful. Like, and also you can do it really anywhere as long as your light pollution isn't too bad. If you're in a city, if you're in your own back garden, um, and at any obviously it has to be nighttime, but at any time, in the sense of the example I'm thinking of is I let my dog out before we go to bed so that she can do her business. And that sounds like a really strange time to have a bit of me time, but actually I just let her go off in the garden and do her thing. And I can look at all the beautiful stars and I can think about how vast the universe is and how tiny I am in comparison and how beautiful it is that I get to have a life and all this kind of thing. It gets me very sentimental and romantic about all these things. But it's true. I think it's just a really beautiful way to understand that all the things that you kind of worry about and stress about and think that are going to overwhelm you, then they're not. Tomorrow's still going to come. You're going to get a new day to try something new. The stars are still going to be there tomorrow night. It kind of puts everything into perspective for me, and I really like
I really like that too. I always say in the middle of nowhere.
that.
So there is no light pollution here. And yeah, one of my favorite things after coming home from something is always looking up because it's like so clear and so pretty. It's yeah, one of my favorite things. You've pretty much touched on it already, but so your book gives sensory expectations and like support ideas and like details like that. Why was it important to you to include the detail for each activity?
One of the kind of key things I wanted to achieve is that I wanted people to be able to go away and to have everything they needed to advocate for themselves. I think that, and when I say people, I'm specifically talking about young people, the kind of people who are here today watching this, because often we are in situations where people advocate on our behalves, and it's well-meaning, absolutely, and it's positive and it's needed and it's always gratefully received, whether it's a teacher, a parent, a caregiver. But I think in order to get your own self-confidence up and to feel confident about becoming older, becoming an older teenager, going into adulthood, you need to be able to advocate for yourself. And so having those sections in the book were really important to me because it meant that any young people reading it could take away real, actionable, practical things that they can share with people. They can go to an activity and they can say, by the way, I really struggle with this, but if you give me this, then I'll be able to enjoy the activity the same way as everybody else. And equally, to be able to go and say, I really, really love this, and I'd like to be able to do more of it and maybe adapt the activity in a positive way as well. So that was really the crux of it for me. I wanted to make sure that anybody who read the book felt that it was a toolbox. Oh, as if I've got one right next to me. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I
Let me
think
just.
no, go for it. I think that really does feed into what we were talking about earlier as well, about advocating for yourself and making things easier for you to be able to do things. So we have like 10 minutes left, maybe 15, depending on how my timekeeping goes. So if anybody has any last questions to ask Ali, feel free to do so. I have a couple more questions, one of which is hopefully not like too much of a brain buster. But how do you go about balancing work as like a copywriter and being a writer? Like, how do you get like bored, or like like do they kind of flow into each other? Do you sometimes feel like, oh my God, I can't look at words anymore, I need to look at anything else?
Yes, definitely. So I think this ties in actually really nicely with a question that I've seen in the Q&A about other creative outlets. And I think for me, the important thing about staying sane when all you do is write all the time is to have other things that allow your brain to turn off. So, um, gosh, where to even start? I guess there are little things, little hobbies that you can take up that you're not doing for any particular reason. You're not trying to make money out of it. You're not even trying to necessarily be good at it. When I was growing up, my grandma, the same one that used to write poems with me, taught me how to knit. I'm not a very good knitter. Nobody's ever going to be wearing my creations. I can't even knit in a straight line. However, it is very therapeutic and very relaxing to just kind of sit and work with your hands. And especially when as a copywriter, 9 to 5, I'm using my brain. As an author, on my evenings and weekends, I'm using my brain. Sometimes I just want to use my hands, whether it's knitting or whether it's coloring. I'm a big fan of Halloween, and I have a lot of spooky coloring books. So I do really enjoy using those sometimes. And outside of creative outlets, even things like taking my dog for a walk. As I said earlier, I've got a dog, I've got a Labrador. She needs a lot of walking. And it's great to just get outside and throw a frisbee or throw a tennis ball or whatever it might be and not think about being productive and using my brain in that way. So for me, I think that it's not got to the point yet where my brain has exploded from too many words. But I think if I didn't have all of those other little bits to keep me sane, it probably would.
Yeah, yeah. I studied film, and so at some point I just had to stop had to stop looking at videos and stuff, because otherwise I just pick it apart completely. And yeah, it's having a different hobby from what you do for like work, and even if you love work and that was your hobby, I think it's good to
Mm,
like separate sometimes. And yeah, just you need to be able to replenish your creativity, I think. Kind
definitely.
of related to that, I guess, we have one question that is, do you guys have any unusual hobbies? And I'm also going to ask chat, do you have any unusual hobbies? I don't think I really do. Oh, I like having dance parties. Is that a hobby, unusual
I
hobby?
think that's a hobby.
I
Very
have,
good.
thank you. I have like a one of those sunset lamps that like goes through like different colors. So I put that on and then I put some music on, and that's my dance party. Do you happen to have any unusual hobbies, Ali?
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm letting everybody down. Normally, to be fair, roller skating is considered quite unusual. I do not know many other people that roller skate, and I've actually got a group of girls at work very keen to go roller skating with me this summer because they've not done it since they were a child. So normally that's the one that I go for. Or the knitting again, although it is
Mm.
becoming more popular among the younger generations. We're all going back to the things our grandparents used to do. So what used to be unusual is now pretty mainstream for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a it's still a good answer, because I can't roller skate, but I think it'd be very cool to be able to do so. Another question we have is, what are your stims?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I always mispronounce this as well. Is it echolalia? Is that how you
I
say it?
think so. Echolalia?
Okay.
I don't know.
Some
That
that
might be the
thing.
American way.
Yeah. Basically, where you repeat sounds over and over and over again. I'm really bad at that one. Or I say really bad, it's not a bad thing. I think it's great fun. But for example, when I'm concentrating really hard, I sing the Jurassic Park theme tune, and people at work have been like, Ali, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because obviously it's off-putting for other people that are around you, but it means that I'm in the zone and that I'm working really hard. So I do often get theme tunes and little catchphrases stuck in my head, and I'll repeat those all the time. Or you know, people in your life who say something really stupid, and then you catch on to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to say that over and over and over again until I don't even know what it means anymore. I also have a lot of fidgets, so I am a avid fidget collector. Maybe that could be an unusual hobby. I've got quite a vast collection of fidgets.
How many do you think you have?
See, I'm going to embarrass myself now, because maybe what I think is a vast collection is not. I think like solidly 10 to 15 different fidgets, and bearing in mind that you can only use one at a time. I'm pretty proud of that.
I think
Let me
that's a,
know in the
yeah.
chat if you've got more fidgets than me, and I will
I
work on my
I
collection.
I need to up my game because all my fidgets are just like random household objects that I have, like this hair bubble, which has served me well for this talk. So
Yeah.
I really need to invest in some good ones. Let's see what other question. This should be an easy one. What is your favorite color?
See, you say this should be an
I
easy
say
one.
that,
Yeah.
no.
However, I don't have a favorite color. I've come to realize this. It makes me very sad, because most people, they immediately go, it's this. This is my favorite color. I can more actually tell you what colors I don't like. I don't like red, and I don't really like orange. Everything else is fair game. Everything. I'm more of a rainbow kind of girl, but yeah, red and orange are not for me.
I think it definitely depends on the shade for sure for me. Um, but yes, I think mine is like probably yellow, maybe green, maybe pink, depends on the day.
This is it. It
I have like groups of things,
changes.
you know? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, this is probably a really good question. Have you experienced burnout, and any tips for recognize it in yourself and maybe like also getting yourself out of it?
Yes, I have definitely experienced burnout. And I think it comes from doing too much and expecting too much of yourself, and not prioritizing your coping strategies. And I think sometimes the conversation in neurotypical spaces can be about self care. And I don't necessarily think that that's invalid at all, but I think it's a little bit different for neurodivergent people, in the sense of, when people think about self care, they think about a bubble bath or face masks or listening to calming music, which, to be fair, might be relevant in this case. But for me, I've found that usually when I'm in burnout, it's due to sensory overload. And it'll be because I haven't taken enough time away from environments that I find triggering. So my best advice, if you also experience burnout in the same way as I do, which is that you've expected yourself to socialize too much, you've expected yourself to sit in a noisy office with tuna sandwiches and fluorescent lights too much, or even that you've just spent, it sounds crazy, too much time around your friends and family. Because this is the thing, I think what we all need to kind of reflect on as neurodivergent people is that, unfortunately, some of the things that we really enjoy can also lead to burnout, and can also lead us to feeling more exhausted. So it's about pacing. I was going to say spacing, not correct. It's about pacing yourself, and learning the best ways for you to get that kind of sensory relief, I guess. So for me, it will be having my sunglasses on, having my headphones on, a weighted blanket. I love a weighted blanket. Spending so, or my dog. If you have a pet that is willing to climb on top of you, that's also a great one. And also making sure, as much as I love spending time with my friends and family, some weekends you just need to book to do absolutely nothing, and that is okay. That's absolutely fine.
I think, spacing also kind of makes sense there, like spacing things out makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. Maybe we'll work with that.
Okay, we are near the end. We will go over by just a tiny bit. But I have one final question from the audience, and then one final question, two-ish final questions from me. How many books do you read now compared to when you were little?
Oh, goodness. Is that the audience question? Yes. Okay. So, I read many, many less books than I read when I was little, and it makes me really sad. And I'm trying to revisit that. I think on the one hand, being an adult is really exhausting. I feel like there's a lot more sensory stuff that I have to deal with. That's not to scare anybody. It is totally worth it. Don't get me wrong, but you just have to plan a bit more around the different environments that you're going to be in. It's not just go to school and go home. And so for me, I don't necessarily have as much time to read anymore. But also I'm writing books now. So I think that's quite fun, is that rather than reading lots of books and dreaming about writing one myself one day, I am actually. So I've written my first one, as we know, we've talked about it this evening. I'm currently writing my second one, which I cannot share the title of at present, but it will loosely be about travel because I work in the travel industry now. So it's going to be more of a neurodivergent guide to travel rather than adventure. And writing a book takes a lot of time and it doesn't leave a lot of time for reading. But I've moved on from fantasy and I'm now really into like cozy crimes, like, that kind of, oh, this famous jewel has got lost at the coastal palace and who's going to find it and all that kind of lovely stuff. So nothing gory or horrible or anything like that. And so I'm really trying to find like books in that niche that I really enjoy, because then it kind of reignites my excitement to read and it can be a way to relax after a long day. So, yes, less than I would like to, but I'm trying to do something about it.
Yeah, I see some, but to be fair, I see some, sorry, I finished my own sentence while saying it. Some people set themselves like, like I need to read this many books per year, and then they feel so sad when they don't. So I think it is good to definitely, like take it as it goes. My question to kind of wrap us up before I go into a few housekeeping-y thingies is what do you hope that young readers take away from the Autistic Guide to Adventure?
I love that question. That's so lovely. I hope that they will take away confidence. I think that's the biggest thing that I would like people to take away from reading the book. Even if, although I hope this don't happen, you read it and you think every single activity in there sounds rubbish and I don't want to do it. I hope that you will have, at least by reading it and learning about the different sensory things that are involved, the different supports that you can ask for, different ways of getting started in different activities, you will take away that self confidence of, I can try something new. And it's okay if I'm bad at it as long as I enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, it's okay not to do it anymore. Because I think that was something that I really struggled with growing up, is that I felt, oh, I should be enjoying this and therefore I'm going to keep doing it until I enjoy it. And unfortunately, we can't all like everything. And there will be things in life where you think, it's not for me. We've talked previously about the fact that you love your games and that I'm not really particularly into games, which is bizarre for an autistic person, I know. But that's okay. Like, I don't force myself to play games. I just go and read or I write or I do something that I'm really passionate about. So, yeah, I think that I'd love it if more kids got outdoors and more kids were doing different activities and people were feeling more excited about spending time outside. But ultimately, I just want people to feel better about themselves, to have a better relationship with themselves, and to feel that confidence that I can do it. I can give it a go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's so important. Like finding stuff you like as well as finding stuff you don't like are equally as
Yes.
important for finding out about yourself. So yeah, I think that's
Yes.
such an important message to share. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today and everybody listening or watching in the future. Ooh. Um, is there anything you'd like to plug or share, Ali?
Oh, goodness. Well, if you would all like to read The Autistic Guide to Adventure, that would be fantastic. And you can buy it at any good bookstore or online at Amazon. Um, as I said, I'm writing my second book, so watch this space. There'll be another one coming in the future. And for any kind of parents or caregivers who are listening in, I am also on social media, so you can follow me at Ali Wrote and hopefully get some cool ideas of cool things to do with your young people. And thank you all so much for such a wonderful evening. I've had a really lovely time.
Me too. Yes, okay, sorry, I'm gonna have to put my like professional face on
Serious,
again.
Hayden.
Yes. So yes, thank you everyone. I will just briefly remind you of our next sessions and a little bit more on us. So our next uncommon talk will be Brian, who a lot of you might know from our Minecraft or D&D or Anime Club sessions. He does a lot of those. And he is also a neuroscience whiz. So that would be on Tuesday, the 17th of June at 6 p.m. And this will be in our newsletter and also on social media if you ever need a reminder about that. We also then have Anna McNay, who is a curator, editor, and writer. That will be on Tuesday, the 1st of July at 6 p.m. And then we'll also be running summer camp soon. So keep an eye out for those. These will include drawing and crafts, Minecraft, Roblox, video creation, Dungeons and Dragons, and I think also creative writing. And then we'll also be running our regular clubs between 1 and 7 p.m. So there's absolutely anything for anyone. So please do check those out. And that would be again on our social media, website, etc. And yes, thank you so much for joining us and for coming. And I've had a lovely time. And I will let everybody go to have their dinner or whatever, or play games, read books, etc. Go outside.
Yes, please go outside. Look at the stars tonight. That's your task, everybody. Go outside and look at the stars tonight.
Yes.